Hey guys, Letter Magic here, and it's finally time to bring back one of the most popular series on my channel, the weirdest MTG cards ever. And boy, has it been a while since I made the last instance of this, which could only mean one thing: I need money. Speaking of that, have you seen the Teespring link? I might be a little biased, but I think I've got some wonderful t-shirts on my Teespring store. Check it out. So the first card I want to show off today is Dawn Charm. It's a 2-cost white instant. It's actually a common from Planar Chaos, and it states, choose one, prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn, or regenerate target creature, or counter target spell that targets you. So pretty vanilla triple modal spell. Wait a minute. Did that just say counter target spell that targets you? And it's not even mixed blue. But you can't just go and do that. You can't just outright counter a spell without being blue. Planar Chaos was weird. That's a bit of an oddity, I've got to say. But next up, we've got Death Grip. It's a double black enchantment. Now, this was actually printed in Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, Revised 4th, and 5th edition, believe it or not. So they certainly kept it going for a while, which is odd considering it states pay 2 black. You can destroy a green spell as it is being cast. This action may be played as an interrupt and does not affect green cards already in play. Odd way to phrase it, but if you look at the updated Oracle text, it says pay 2 black, counter target green spell. And in modern terms, that is what it does. It's a mono black counter spell in the form of an activated ability on a black enchantment. What is even going on in this video? You can't do that. That's not what black does on the color pie. It was early on. Okay, I'll give him a pass on this. Let's move on to something a little bit more normal. Just kidding, this is this series we're talking about. Next up, we've got Fete Spinner. It's a 3-cost rare from Mirrodin. It's a 1/2 human wizard, and it says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player chooses draw step, main phase, or combat phase. The player skips each instance of the chosen step or phase this turn. Does this seem like a little bit of like a fourth wall break? I mean, the cards can refer to themselves, characters, the lore, the plane, but this is just outright referring to part of the game. It's like this human wizard realized that it's part of a game, knows what phases are. Okay, I'm stretching it a little bit. It's not like they mentioned it in the Oracle text, which by the way does say no one knows what she is watching, but she never takes her eye off it. Which is kind of suspicious, like she does kind of know what's going on. And maybe if she's affecting fate itself at like a universe level, maybe she is aware that she's in a game. Creepy. So anyway, what this does at a functional level is forces your opponent to skip their draw step, both of their main phases, the first and the second one, or all of combat. It's their choice, but you know, those are kind of important. I would assume that in most cases they would choose draw step if they had a pretty good board state. Otherwise, they would choose to skip the combat phase if they just needed cards to rebuild their army. But it's kind of like every turn would take 2 turns, so pretty darn good card. I've got to say, though, there may be 1 or 2 cards that can do something like this, but I have never seen this before. I've seen phase duplicating, and I think I maybe have seen phase skipping, but this is pretty unique in what it specifically does. So definitely a strange card here. By the way, it says each opponent. Oh, throw this in a multiplayer commander deck. So moving on, we've got Mana Tide. Really cool artwork here. It's another Planar Chaos card. It's a 1-cost white instant that states counter target spell unless his controller pays 1 generic. Wait, what? Okay, I'm pretty sure white spells aren't supposed to be able to counter spells. What's going on here? Okay, I'm a bad actor. Planar Chaos, the whole theme of it, my understanding is it was supposed to be like a reimagining, like a what-if story of what if the color identities were different and each color did something different. So in this alternate reality timeline of the planes and the universe and how it was formed and everything, there are no artifacts. In fact, in this entire set, there were no artifacts, kind of indicating that they never invented that technology, I guess. Seems odd to me, but I guess you just couldn't imbue physical objects with magic or something. I don't know. I'm sure there was a novel about it and I'm massacring the lore once again. So cards like Mana Tide that seem a little bit off color identity-wise are supposed to be alternate reality versions of spells that already existed. So every single one of them has an identical spell in the color it's supposed to be in from a past set, but they were shifted in color to represent what could have been. They also had a slightly different border, which is also, once again, kind of a fourth wall break in the game where, oh, what if in an alternate reality wizards made white the mana controlling power, and printed the card titles in a different color, by the way. And they made the card frame a little bit different and the border a little bit different. This whole storyline went pretty meta. So once you understand it, it makes sense. What doesn't make sense is since they screwed with the color pie and fairness and basic level of the game so badly with this set, why were any of these cards left to be legal in other formats that are basically Eternal format? But I guess Wizards just thought, screw it, if we let them do it in Standard, how bad could it be? None of these are that disruptive, none of them are even that heavily played. So moving on, we've got Iceland Leprechaun, or Iceland Leprechaun, I'm not sure if the S is silent or not. But anyway, this little guy is a 1/1 for 1 single green mana from Legends, printed as a common. So this might look like a pretty normal card, but there's a couple oddities here. I'm going to read it exactly as printed. It states, all creatures that block or are blocked by Leprechaun. Wait a minute, you're supposed to refer to the card by its full name. So mistake number 1 there. Become green creatures. So you change their color identity. And then it says use counters to indicate changed creatures. Cost to tap, maintain, or use a special ability of target creature remains entirely unchanged. So in other words, you don't change the color of their activated abilities, for example. You just simply change the creature to be green. And if you're asking yourself, what the heck is the point of that and what good would that possibly do? Well, clearly you haven't seen Legends close enough where color identity actually was important, but in more up-to-date play, very close to nothing. Unless you're going to use some kind of protection from spell or something, I don't see a big benefit, either that or if you're playing like all Legends cards. By the way, the updated Oracle text did actually clarify the card and update that error. It states, whenever Iceland, whatever Leprechaun, blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, that creature becomes green. And then they actually added reminder text, this effect lasts indefinitely. I mean, remember, it didn't say until end of turn. So he basically attacks, gets blocked, throws a bucket of green paint on the creature, and then runs away laughing. Just kidding, he probably died. But that thing is painted green forever. That's a very strange war tactic, I've got to say. For some reason, I just absolutely love this creature. I do hate the concept of color identity being important. It's way too rock, paper, scissors. And back then, it was pretty much all or nothing, where if you care about protection from green or this red spell, that black spell, and your opponent wasn't playing that, your cards do basically nothing. In more recent times, Wizards had said they're actively trying to cut out the whole good luck, bad luck versus who you just happen to sit down and play against, you know, whether or not your cards do something or nothing. They don't like that because it's not strategy, it's pure luck. And it also encourages spying, information gathering, scouting, that kind of stuff. Just bad behavior. It's just bad. And then in the last year, they brought it back. They brought back protection from individual colors. Awesome. Thanks, Wizards. So next up, we've got Lapse of Certainty. It's a 3-cost white instant common from Conflux, and it states, counter target spell. Okay, hold up a minute. Those other counter spells that were clearly in the wrong color were from Planar Chaos. What's your excuse, Lapse of Certainty? This wasn't even from the same block. I mean, this is from the Alara block, where it was Shards of Alara, Conflux, and Alara Reborn. In fact, it doesn't even occur on the same plane. So I had the explanation for Mana Tithe. I can't tell you what's going on with this card. I have no idea. I probably just don't know enough about the Alara block, but anyway, it says counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, put it on top of its owner's library instead of into that player's graveyard. Oh, maybe that makes it white. It's still a counter spell, come on. So this is just weird. Another off-color counter spell. So next up, the card that everybody's been waiting for, Chains of Mephistopheles. Oh, I bet you've heard of this one. I'm really hoping I didn't feature this in a past video in the series, but I'm way too lazy to check. If it did, hell, let's bring the bus back around, because for 2, as an enchantment, you can throw this out and, I quote, every time a player draws a card, that player must first discard a card from his or her hand. If there are no cards in player's hand, take top card from library and place it in the graveyard instead of drawing. This enchantment does not apply to the first card drawn by a player during the draw phase. Oh, well, that's about as clear as a wall made out of solid obsidian. Let's look up the updated Oracle text, which definitely makes more sense. I'm being sarcastic. It states, if a player would draw a card except for the first one they draw on their draw step each turn, that player discards a card instead. If the player discards a card this way, they draw a card. If the player doesn't discard a card this way, they put the top card of their library into their graveyard. Scientists, PhDs, NASA, Area 51, everybody has taken a look at this card, and nobody has ever figured out what it does. It appears to contradict itself. The rulings only serve to confuse you more. Basically, if somebody plays this, just forfeit the game because nobody knows what to do or how to proceed or when you draw, how can you not draw, then discard, then also draw? Is that draw affected? One of the rulings says something about the effect is cumulative. I don't even know what they're referring to. Neither does anybody. And don't be fooled by the people in the comment section trying to explain how this works. This card is cursed. By its very nature, it cannot be understood or acted upon by mortal beings. It's probably best if I just move on. So next up, we've got Withering Boon, which is an uncommon card from Mirage, and it's a 2-cost black instant, formerly called an interrupt, and it states pay 3 life, and then counter target summon spell. Wait, hold on, hold the phone for a second. This is a black counter spell. It's a spell with an activated ability, which I can only name one other instance of in the entire history of the game. Okay, spoiler alert, the Oracle text actually fixes this. But this is just a slightly more black essence scatter. What the heck? It's black. Why not just let it hit the field and then blow it up? I mean, okay, enter the battlefield effects, but this also isn't blue. How can you have this? Why does this exist? How does this exist? The card makes about as much sense as going into battle in your armored blue sports bra, and that's about it. And let me just be the first to say, that hair though. I guess the art is supposed to represent like most Magic players if you wake them up at like 5 in the morning. I mean, I'll admit, that's basically me. I mean, you'll get a very similar reaction. So anyway, the updated Oracle text says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, pay 3 life, counter target creature spell. Which, by the way, were formerly referred to as summon spells. So yeah, this just has an additional cost, and it is a black counter spell. Now, if this was read the way it was actually written, you could actually fire this off multiple times at multiple spells on the stack, because it would be a blank instant speed spell with an activated ability. Like I said, not unheard of in the game, but extremely uncommon. So you would put this on the stack, and then you would be able to say pay 3 life, then pay 3 life, then pay 3 life, and activate it over and over and over because it is an activated ability of a spell. Thankfully, they corrected this. Now, how it used to work, I don't know. So next up, you know what the hell, Rebuff the Wicked. It's a 1-cost white instant, uncommon from Planar Chaos, counter target spell that targets a permanent you control. Or as I like to call it, Turn Aside. This is literally just a white version of Turn Aside, which is the point. That's what they did. It's an alternate reality where Turn Aside was white. Yeah. Next, we've got a very interesting card. It's a 10-cost rare sorcery in blue. It's from Betrayers of Kamigawa, and it states each player shuffles their hand, graveyard, and all permanents they own into their library, then draws 7 cards. Each player's life total becomes 7. Yeah, if you thought that hiding behind the ban list makes you safe from a Shahrazad effect, well, first of all, Karn, and secondly, Sway of the Stars. You basically just restart the game, because remember, it says all permanents they own into the library. At least the updated Oracle text states that. You might notice the term non-land permanent is missing from the card, which means you have to take all of your lands and just shuffle them into your library. So everything you own except for emblems gets nuked. Well, and I guess it doesn't say cards in exile, so you could suspend a card, leave it there in the exile zone. I can't really think of any other examples. I guess your commander would still be in the command zone, except it wouldn't, because this card is banned in Commander, FYI. Oh, that's right. This card was such an enormous menace, they had to ban it from Commander. And trust me, that's a high bar. The people who run that ban list will let anything through. But oh no, not this. So you've probably noticed by following through in your head, you just restart the game with 7 life. That's basically what happens. With the exception of emblems, the game is completely and utterly restarted. You basically reset your library to 60 cards, unless some cards have been exiled and then you leave them there. I assume. I don't think that permanents are permanents when they're sitting in the exile zone. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. And then you just redraw 7, you start with no lands, and proceed with the game. Also, after Sway of the Stars resolves, then it goes to your graveyard, so you'd actually have 59 cards, and then this in your graveyard, because that's the last thing it does when it finishes resolving, is go to the graveyard, at which point your library and all your permanents would have been reset. So you might be thinking what I am. Mix it with Obnixilis Reignited's emblem, which says basically whenever a player draws a card, they lose 2 life, or whoever it's attached to, I should say. So they would draw 7 cards and then put 7 triggers on the stack, waiting for this to get done resolving, each of which would lose them 2 life. And then their life total would become 7. This would stop resolving, and then the triggers would go off and they would just die. Well, that's fun, and I've got to say, that's almost the only good time to play this card because, well, it basically helps your opponent as much as it helps you. Unless you're about to lose the game, you're just like, fine, master reset button. And then I guess technically it's still your turn, so you could, if you haven't already, play a land, and then you're effectively going first in the now reset game. And of course, going first is an advantage, but then they just do 7, and then they get to draw an 8th card, so it's kind of like starting a new game, and they get 8 cards and you get 7. So really, this is just a messed up, obnoxious card, and it's very unusual. So next up, we've got a card called Illumination. It's a double white instant. It's an uncommon for Mirage, and it states, counter target artifact or enchantment spell. That spell's caster gains an amount of life equal to the spell's casting cost. Yep, it's another one of those. What is this doing in Mirage? Why was the color pie so messed up back then? I don't have the answer for you. That's why this series exists. It's weird. So finally, we have got a truly insane card. Oh, there's a good reason I left this one for last. And for the most part, that reason is because this is almost last in alphabetical order, which I am roughly following. Let me introduce you to a rare from 10th edition called Upwelling. And for the record, it was also printed as rare in Scourge. The single weirdest part about this card is that it's only $1.99 on the open market right now. What? So if you play Commander and green is one of your color identities and you're not playing this card, what are you even doing with your life? Because it's a 4-cost, single green, by the way, enchantment, and it states, mana pools don't empty at the end of phases or turns. And then it has the wonderful reminder text of, this effect stops mana burn. Because this card came out about 3 years before Mana Burn was removed from the game. I know, it was shockingly recent, actually. What's Mana Burn? Who cares? It's irrelevant these days. And the flavor text is just wonderful. It says, Freyalise promised a dawn that would never end, a day of limitless life. As many dread her promise as revere it, which they should, because if that ever happened, the planet, first of all, would probably stop rotating. That would cause a bit of an abrupt breaking effect. And then within a day or two, that side of the planet would just burn. It would just absolutely burn to ash. What's your problem, Freyalise? So anyway, if there was the craziest color you could possibly put this in, it would be green, because green generates a lot of mana. So any mana that goes in your pool stays there until one of two things happens. 1, you spend it, or 2, this enchantment gets destroyed. I mean, I've seen a ton of cards, mostly red ones, that say mana doesn't get removed from your pool at the end of phases, but it does at the end of turn. This says no, turns too. I mean, ending the person's turn is the great equalizer to this effect, and this is, as far as I know, the only card that'll let you keep it between turns. There could be others that are phrased a little bit differently, but I couldn't find any. So if you have, Nykthos Shrine to Nyx and you're doing like a green devotion deck and you just dump 10 mana into your mana pool, there it is. You've got 10 mana until you want to spend it. The amount of absolute crazy crap you could do in mono green, let alone mixing red or blue especially, oh my gosh. Just X spells in general. I mean, giant creatures, pull off giant combos, pay for triggers over and over and over and over and over. You could build up some mana with this card. I love it. It is so stupidly absurd. Oh, by the way, even weirder, for $2, you can get the 10th edition of this card. For 99 cents at the time of this recording, you can get the Scourge version of this card, which is far older and less exist. Explain that one to me. So if you guys have any of your own suggestions for the weirdest cards ever printed, first watch the other 7 videos in the series because it was probably covered already, and secondly, then leave it down in the comment section. Hopefully I can make another one of these because I like weird magic, I like weird cards, I like quirky, fun gameplay, I love playing Commander. So what else would I want to do but share all these oddities with the world? So have fun building your black-white counterspell deck, and I'll see you guys next video.